What's up, guys? Welcome to my review of Capitalism Stinks, the show. No, wait, Down with Corporate Greed, the show? Knights of Guinevere, that's it. Might have to get my glasses prescription updated, my apologies. Knights of Guinevere has become one of the most anticipated Glitch production series for the past 8 months, not only thanks to its interesting premise despite how vague the trailers were with information, but it's also the first 2D animated show by Glitch, where they'd only been really creating 3D animated content until now.
But wait! There's more!
Animation legend Dana Terrace is the mastermind behind this project. If you somehow don't know who she is, she's responsible for creating the Owl House on Disney, which became one of the most beloved and successful serialized Disney shows of all time. So with all these factors at play, it's understandable why not only so many people were excited, but would have pretty high expectations out of the show as well. Usually I'm pessimistic, almost to a fault, but when it comes to my hopes for this pilot, I was much more optimistic this time around. So now that I've watched the pilot, I can't even act surprised that it turned out as well as it did. The world was just as fascinating as I thought, and the characters just as lovable, while it's tackling some interesting topics in a pretty nuanced fashion. So let's get into the meat of the review, starting now.
It's okay, Papa. They'll bring her back, and when they do, I'll fix her again.
The episode opens with some general world building and exposition surrounding the show's universe. Basically, there's this giant floating park in the sky called Park Planet, founded by Orville Park, who, if you couldn't tell, is supposed to be a blatant stand-in for Walt Disney and the park itself as Disney World/Disneyland. He lives there with his daughter Olivia, a young girl who is usually accompanied by her own personal Guinevere princess. These Guinevere androids are extremely advanced technology that have been mass-produced for Park Planet, as they are able to store memories they had with customers who visit the park. Because of this feature, it encourages customers to come back to the park over and over due to kids, their parents, or both developing bonds with these androids, which of course results in the Park Planet and Orville becoming richer by the second, as I imagine the people who visit the park don't know the ugly truth behind what goes down into making these machines. While nothing was ever specified directly, it seems heavily implied that inhumane acts are done behind the scenes in order to make these Guinevere androids work to their highest capacity. The thing is, Olivia's got her own personal Guinevere who's developing a sense of free will or resistance against her ownership. If I'm not mistaken, this one has tried to escape multiple times over the years, but keeps getting found, with Olivia always insisting how she can just fix the Gwen over and over again no matter how many times it takes, even if that isn't what Gwen herself wants. Olivia's clearly super attached to this Gwen and likely considers them best friends, while the Gwen views it as a toxic cycle of control she wants to escape from at any cost. We then cut to about 70 to 80 years into the future, give or take, with the POV now focusing on the human main characters Frankie and Andy, two young women that are best friends/roommates just trying to live their lives. Andy recently got this new engineering gig working for the Park Planet, and a lot of people around town don't seem to be thrilled with this life choice she made, calling her a crownie as a derogatory term. We never got any specific explanation on what this term means, but it could be because, princesses wear crowns and she works for a company that, does all this princess crap. She tries to buy some supplies from a store an old classmate runs, and this guy is giving her trouble the entire time because of her new job, seeing her as nothing more than a sellout corporate slave. This is why I made the joke about capitalism and how general work culture is treated in America right now, influencing how the show's world is shaped. As we're now in a time period where it's very easy and a lot of the time justified to call out bigger corporations for their gross and sometimes unethical business practices, with Disney receiving the most shots fired at them throughout this pilot. It totally makes sense why someone like Dana would have a bit of a bone to pick with Disney, as the higher-ups at the company were the reason the Owl House's run on the network was shorter than it was planned to be, resulting in the third season getting cut down to 3 long specials instead of a full season, and the entire character of the Collector being created in order to rework the later parts of the story. Granted, the end result we got still turned out really good, it just wasn't the original vision Dana had in mind. So while it's obvious there is some spite there, Dana obviously doesn't full-on hate everything related to Disney. She even said herself on Twitter back in August of this year, specifying how there's always gotta be some love coming from the creator, or sustaining yourself to make said thing would be impossible. With Andy serving as someone who doesn't really like how her world is run, but she's trying to make a better life for herself, and taking this job is presumably one of the only ways to do it. That's kind of the reality of the world we currently live in. Sometimes you gotta take jobs where maybe the job itself is very good for your future, the people or company you're working for isn't, which can cause rifts between relationships. With Andy's case here, here, it's extremely severe how much flack people in her position get, because later in the episode, Andy actually gets fired off screen from her job, and one of the local Undercity folks starts giving her a hard time about being a crownie, then spits on her shoe. Andy tries to stand up for herself, but then feels a bit sorry for the guy when he starts, coughing up some kind of blue goop from his lungs. This whole interaction gave me big Zahn and Piltover vibes from Arcane. Piltover was this beaming city of progress where basically everyone there, looked like they had perfect lives, while the Undercity of Zahn was constantly neglected and abused by Piltover. The air was toxic to breathe, drugs flooded the streets, and it was far from a luxurious life to have down there. Cog's World, I'm just gonna call the show Cog from here on out, felt very similar in that regard, where if you're working for Park Planet for long enough, you're living a pretty good life, but if not, you're left to fend for yourself since the people on the higher end of the food chain couldn't care less about what happens to you. Also, I'm not sure if this was intentional or not, but it's cool how the abbreviation for the show as Cog kind of plays into the whole theme of just being another cog in the corporate machine thing going on. Good stuff. Then there's Frankie, who's definitely my personal favorite character so far. Like Andy, she's also very tech savvy and wants to advance her skills, but unfortunately hasn't been picked up for the same engineering position as Andy. So her day job is a lot of manual labor, loading up trucks with packages, operating machines to turn regular mugs into Gwen-themed ones, and going out to sea to fish out trash scraps that people on Park Planet throw down below. So basically, she works at an Amazon warehouse. While she's out on her boat scrap run, the boat ends up fishing out a beaten-up Guinevere android, which, you guessed it, is the same one that's been trying to get away from Olivia all those years. Olivia is still alive in this day and age, yet is so old to the point where she can barely leave bed, so when news reaches her that her old Gwen has been fished out of the sea, she wants all hands on deck to make sure that the Gwen can get back to her at any cost. I love the desperation in Olivia's voice here too, which I imagine is because of how close she is to death. She wants the Gwen to be by her side again until she checks out of the mortal plane.
Bring her back! Bring her back! Bring her back!
Whoa, just take it easy, man.
Frankie is beside herself with this discovery, as someone who had loads of fun at the Park Planet as a kid with Andy and the Gwens. The child in her wants to see if she can repair it back to normal. The problem is, her boss Sparky is forbidding her from doing so because he wants to sell it for spare parts and some extra money. Frankie refuses to give up that easily though and asks Andy to help her, sneak it out of the storage Sparky put her in so they can fix her together over at one of the Park Planet labs. But of course, Sparky tries stopping them from leaving since he's still trying to get his bag. Until Andy persuades him by saying if he allows them to fix her, then he could turn an even bigger profit since a working Gwen would obviously be worth a lot more money than the individual parts of a defective one. I loved this whole interaction because of how it highlights how Sparky really is like a foil to these two ladies, as he's someone who's content with his current lifestyle and has no problem dealing with shady people, just as long as he's not working directly for the Park Planet guys. Trying to manipulate Frankie into changing her mind about fixing the Gwen with smooth talk about how trying to, forward her engineering career skills would make her less happy, and saying how selling the Gwen would give her a bigger role at her current job, but that just isn't something she wants to do for the rest of her life. It kind of shows how he's a bit of a hypocrite too, since he claims he doesn't want to see Frankie tied down by some corporate bigwig, yet he's trying to do the same thing just from the other side, if that makes sense. So while the girls were able to get Sparky to back off, it's not like he still supports their dreams or anything. They simply struck a deal which gives him ownership of the Gwen once she's back to normal. At this point, they start to make their way through the lower labs, but soon realize they're being tracked by this giant robot who's trying to bring the Gwen back to Olivia. The scream the Gwen did back there was either a warning the robot was coming, or maybe some memories haunting her from her past. Both could simultaneously be possible as well. The robot corners them by throwing the structure they're inside hundreds of feet away. Somehow they don't die, but cartoon I guess. Luckily the Gwen regains some mobility and not only saves them, but destroys the robot too, in a pretty gruesome fashion at that. This goes to show how much of her time at Park Planet as a kid meant to Frankie, as she started to full-on hallucinate the Gwen was back to normal for a sec. I imagine the amount of terrible experiences this particular Gwen has had over the past 70 to 80 years picking up self-defense or fighting skills was a necessity if she wanted to be free for good. Concluding the episode with Andy and Frankie hooking the Gwen up to the machine where she begins to soft reboot. By the time I finished this episode, the first thing that came to mind was nothing from the original teaser 8 months ago actually happened in this pilot, which makes me wonder if the footage was made for that teaser exclusively, or if we'll have to wait to see if the full context of those scenes in future episodes. All in all, I'm very happy and excited to see more of the show. As Glitch's first big 2D animated project, Cog really came in swinging on all cylinders. This whole dystopian world has really pulled me in thanks to how well it contrasts with the princess theming Park Planet goes for. There's a lot of potential here for something insane. Olivia, or maybe her father Orville, seem like the prime overarching antagonists, while Sparky, albeit threatening, will probably be a temporary threat who eventually starts helping out the protagonist. Since there's been that old myth of how Walt Disney's head was frozen in time, I could easily see them doing something similar with Orville. It'd be hilarious, yet spooky. Even if that takes a while to to happen. We gotta swallow the pill about how more content probably won't be dropping for a bit, at least not until Digital Circus is over or something, and I can't see that happening until, 2026. If I had to rank this, compared to other glitch pilots, it'd be in my top 2. Damn near interchangeable with Digital Circus, honestly. I'd love to know what you guys thought about it in the comments below and what you're most looking forward to seeing in future events. But for now, I will see you guys next time. Peace out, take care, bye-bye.